Another thing I want to touch on is the difference between politics and policy. And in this election year, we're hearing so much about politics. And everybody looks at it and says, oh yeah, you know, should I vote for Trump? Should I vote for Hillary? What about Bernie? What about the convention, the Republicans, the Democrats, etc.? And that's the focus. And most people don't realize that. Think about this. Once the individual is in office, what are they focused on? Are they focused on, well, they might be focused on politics, yeah. But what are they really focused on? They're focused on issues. And what are we focused on here? What are we trying to do? We're trying to get you to think about issues, because ultimately that's where it ends up, okay? And it's what I talked about before. You want to look at issues, you want to look at your position, you want to understand your arguments, you want to understand the values that support your decision making, and you want to be able to get something done in a meaningful way. So here I'm saying that at iLobby, we do not focus on candidates. We focus on issues, okay? We are issue agnostic. We don't care what your issue is. But I think it's important to understand we're not an ombudsman, meaning we don't help you with your individual problem with a particular agency or a department in the government. What we are looking at is issues at the pre-legislative state so that you can become a citizen legislator. And what that effectively means is you think about issues, you pull together ideas that are important to you, and then you inform your elected representatives about them, either directly or through a public affairs, a government affairs, or a lobbying firm. It's all kind of the same thing. So, when you look at a politician, however, you're saying, hey, I voted for this person into office, and I'd like to know a little bit more about what they think. And I'm going to give you a short guideline. There's many ways of looking at this in terms of who they are. You might just say, hey, I like that person because they are in the same party as I am. Or I like that person because we need someone younger. Or I like that person because we need a woman president. Or whatever it might be, okay? Then what happens is you're making those decisions, but you're not necessarily looking at it in terms of three key things I think are important, which are, and this is for the candidate, you're looking at their issues, their accomplishments, and their promises, okay? And it's the same thing. When they're being interviewed, or when you read about them, listen closely and you can break these down. They will talk, when they are asked, about what issues are important to them, because it'll come up all the time. Again, the issues are the problems that we have in society at every level, whether it's domestic or foreign, whether it's local, state, or federal. Lots of issues. All the time, there's always new problems because we're undergoing change. It isn't like, oh, we solved that problem, we don't have to look at it again. No, it's there and it's going to be around. So they will talk about their issues. They will tell their position. One of the things that's interesting, I find, is that, you know, people get upset because they say, oh, you know, 20 years ago, he said this and she said that, and they changed their position. They flip-flopped on this. You hear that all the time. They flip-flopped. And they look at it and say, well, I made a new or a different or an informed decision because the facts changed. Well, think about that. You're asking someone to be consistent over a 5, 10, 15, 20-year period. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying that there should be some underlying values that drive that, because you don't want someone who is a hypocrite or who flip-flops on issues, and one day they say, well, whatever they want, or, you know, I'll do that, or whatever. Or what happens is people say, look, I wanted this, but my constituents wanted that, so I had to go with them, and then the mood of the country changed, or the facts changed, and then I changed my, what? Position. On what? An issue, okay? So 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I voted against the assault rifle ban. But now, things have changed. a reasonable person would do that. They would say, you know, there's new facts, there's more powerful weapons, there's different kinds of dangers, and the guns are getting into the hands of people we didn't anticipate, so I am now in favor of renewing that ban. And you can say, well, they're inconsistent. And again, I think that, you know, as voters, we just need to understand that happens. People change their mind, they get new facts, they grow. I don't know if they flip-flop 20 times, that's too many, or 3 times, or 1 time. I don't know. I just know that over time people change, and it's unlikely that they will hold the exact same point of view or position on an issue if they have new information as they did 10 or 15 years ago. It just isn't human, you know? So that's one thing. You're going to look at their issues. The next thing is, what did they accomplish, right? They had all these issues. They said they were going to do something. So what have they done, right? When they're in office, they're there to vote and support and represent the people in their district. And so what should happen is the accomplishments are really, did they show up, right? That's a big part of it. What's their absentee rate? Did they show up? And did they vote? And how did they vote? And if they voted, that's great. The other thing they can do to really assert their position is they can sponsor bills, because that means that they're an author of a bill. They say, you know what? I became an author of this bill, and I authored 10 different bills, or I became a co-sponsor of a bill, and I did that. That's the job of the legislator. That's what they do. They author bills, they research the facts, they talk with their constituents, and then over time, they move up in seniority. And when they move up, their accomplishments increase, of course, and they end up becoming a chair of various committees. And the committees all have variations. Some committees are more powerful than others. For instance, the Appropriations Committee, which appropriates money that is then used for the budget and lots of programs. That's a powerful position because you're controlling the purse. If you are the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, you're in a very distinct place, whereas on some other committees, they're just not as powerful. The Judiciary Committee is powerful, the Rules Committee is powerful, and there's a handful of others like that. But you might just be on the, the Air and Space, or the Technical Committee, or the Committee regarding government printing or something. I mean, there's a bunch of other ones that are in there, and those are all available, and we make those available so that you know what they are, and they're all available on the web at the government sites as well anyway. So finally, those are the kinds of things they do. And then the next thing is, as they're coming into office, they will have promises. So they will say, hey, I am going to do this. I will get this done. I will get that done, etc. Now, some of these are false promises. They can't actually get the whole thing done. Some of these are big challenges for them. But they can say, look, I authored a bill. I got co-sponsors. I got agreement. I promised I would do it. I did the best I could. But those guys on the other side of the aisle stopped me, and I couldn't get it through because we were in the minority. Okay, that can happen. So they make these promises about the things that they want to get done. The voters look at it and say, oh, we agree with the issues. We don't care what the accomplishments are. The promises all sound great. Let's go for that. And now what's interesting is I think it's important that you look at all three when you look at a politician. But in reality, sometimes people just make promises. They don't have a clear idea of where they stand on the issues, believe it or not, or they're changing throughout the campaign. They don't have a ton of accomplishments that can prove consistency of behavior that will show that they're going to get it done, but they make a lot of promises. And then when they're done, and you see this over and over again, when they're done, they get elected to office and they drop all their campaign promises and say, oh, well, the facts changed, I couldn't get this done, etc., etc., etc. Okay? So when they come up for renewal, when they come up for re-election, you look at it and say, well, they promised this, but did they accomplish it? Did they get anything done? Did they do what they say they were going to do? And then you're back on this track. And that's what is going to happen generally when you look and say, oh, I'm going to forgive him on the accomplishments because I understand that. I still align with him or her on these issues. and I believe that they did their best, and therefore let's just vote them back in. So that's just a quick way of evaluating them as you hear politicians talk about what they want to get done. Okay?